Hi, I'm Zach from Corexcell. Today what we're going to show you is the key elements to improving your throwing power and also your hitting power. So like if you're a tennis player with a serve or a quarterback or a pitcher, all those factors, we're going to show you the key elements that you need in order to increase your velocity. But before we go into that, I'm going to show you two clients that I worked with that started with me in high school and became professional baseball players. One's a pitcher and one's an outfielder.
Started here when I was a sophomore in high school, and my goal was to play Division I baseball. And from when I started sophomore year to my senior year, the training helped me so much to get my 60 time down and a lot more power. That's when I started hitting home runs.
This is Matt Leon here, and he trained with us since he was 10 years old, and then all the way up through high school. Played for Seton Hall, and then he ended up making it to the major leagues as a pitcher for the Angels. So pretty good. So to me, throwing power comes into four major factors. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go show you the four major factors on my computer, and then I'm going to break down each one of those so you can understand. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into some program design for the upper body in order for you to understand how you can apply those concepts directly. So here are the four major factors, okay? And I'm gonna go into each one of these individually, okay? So when it comes to throwing power, legs and core are number one. And the reason being is, if I have a professional pitcher that comes in here and they're throwing in the 90s, okay? When you test them from like a broad jump standpoint, most of those athletes can easily hit 9 feet with barely training their broad jump. They're just really naturally gifted in their explosive power. Vertical jump I'm not really concerned about, okay, because I'm looking at how they push off the mound. Same with tennis players that hit like 135, 140 mile an hour. You test them in like a 20-yard dash or you test them in the broad jump, most of the time they're way above average on those explosive tests. Then secondly is the core and rotational power, okay? The arm is just there, it's just loose. Okay, that's why bench press and trying to really get strong in your upper body doesn't really matter. And this is why you see those guys that are super like long and loose in their arms. They don't even look that strong, but they can throw or hit very fast. All right, and the reason is the arm is just a whip. It's just there. It's just relaxed, and then your core and your legs is what drives everything through, so that this thing can release at high velocity. So your upper back, your lats, your teres, okay, your rhomboids, your rotator cuff, okay, when you do this, your external rotator cuff, are going to protect your shoulder, but also I'm going to explain how they're also going to help you increase your throwing speed. So let's look at the lats and the teres, okay? Your lats and your teres are internal rotators of the shoulder. So every time you go to throw and you're releasing internally this way, okay, that lat is helping, and the teres is driving that arm down so you can release. If I take a ball and I throw it down really hard, okay, the harder I throw down, the more it's going to bounce up. Well, think of the external rotator cuff. So your ability for your shoulder to really whip this way, to be able to throw it back hard this way and then release it. All right, so building this external rotator cuff up is going to give you that ability to whip back. It's going to also improve your flexibility this way so that you can really launch it like a rubber band forward this way. And then it acts as deceleration as you release to help protect the shoulder. Then finally are the triceps, okay? So look, every time you arm extend, what am I doing? I'm using those triceps. So the third component to power is basically like upper body plyometrics, upper throws. So that's just simple. You're just getting your arms to move faster with a lighter weight load. So like med ball throws where you're throwing it this way. We have some machines and some devices that you can use and really throw the weight up into the air. It's on like a pivot point, and then you can catch it. And now what we're going to do for the last component, okay, which is your upper body, your chest strength, okay, and endurance, we're going to go back to the computer. So if we're looking at chest strength and endurance, okay, what I try to do is I usually use these percentages if they're going to do barbell bench, which is 65 to 75%, okay? And the reason I use those percentages and not in the 80s and 85 and 90 percentile is because this is a lot less wear and tear on your shoulder, okay? And it keeps the pitcher and the athlete, the tennis player, it keeps their shoulder from getting super tight, Okay, these percentages are really important. And also if you're doing the right rotator cuff and lat work, that's also going to keep you from getting tight in the shoulder. Okay, so that's why these ranges are great. And we're going to explain this a little bit more down here and what your goals are as far as your bench, but I'm going to go over these. Dumbbell and cable unilateral work, okay? So like if you're doing cable punch outs where you're just doing like a single arm, or just dumbbell press like incline, decline, flat bench, those types of things. Those are just great to build both sides so you don't get lopsided, because the athlete's throwing right-handed all the time. You're not just trying to build up the right side to make it stronger for throwing, but the reason that you're doing a lot of this unilateral work, okay, on one side or single arm work is because you're trying to balance both sides out. And the final thing here is speed bench. So like we just talked about is the upper body throws. Okay, this is just a little bit lighter weight load where you're using 50 to 60%. And we use either dumbbells or barbell, and you're just moving it super fast, okay? And between this here, okay, and those upper throws, these are really and this dumbbell work here, these are really the most important components, not this up here, to developing your overall throwing power. But now I want to get into this because I think that barbell bench does have a time and place, especially when you're developing an athlete in high school, okay, or even like a freshman in college, and getting them up to a certain strength level with the barbell bench and then cutting it off. And we're going to explain that when we're getting into program design, but we're going to go down here now. I'm going to talk about this right here. We put a lot of time and energy into these videos, so please like this video if you can, and also subscribe to our channel. So my goal with all my athletes that come to me is to try to get them up to a 225 max as far as bench goes, okay? And that's the initial goal. But for pitchers and throwers, tennis players, that's where I really just have them tap out at. I don't have them try to lift up into the 250s, okay? I just try to get them to a 225 max. It's safe, it's easy, and it gives them enough strength throughout their career to build a nice support structure for strength, endurance, so that they can last longer when they're pitching and they're hitting, and also just general strength that they can just use throughout their entire career. And the other great thing about the 225 is really to get to this max, all you need to do is train between 65 to 75%. And like I said, as you get into these ranges down here, the 80 and 90%, it gets you a lot tighter. So I can get them safely up to this just using this max range right here, all right? And the reason I like 225 is because I found that this is basically what you're going to be tapping out once you finally get to 225. You're only going to be using a barbell bench with 135 or 155 pounds on. Okay, that's when you get into your 40s and your 50s and 60s. This is what you see a lot of older guys use. Okay, they don't really go above that. Why? Because it doesn't wear on your shoulder. Okay, so this is very safe here to be training with. Once we get into this 205 and 225 and you're doing sets of 2 to 5 reps and you're using this is where you're going to get tight. But if you're throwing a lot and hitting a lot, it's going to wear on your shoulder. That's just what I've seen from my experience. Now, the other really important thing is, and this is throughout all our sports training, I have it all down to a science as far as, okay, in order for them to hit 225, the rotator cuff exercise we use, they got to get to 7 pounds. Lat pull, and this is with the right technique. Everyone does lat pull wrong. Okay, and the final thing is triceps. So 100 pounds with this, 25 pounds with triceps, and 7 pounds with the rotator cuff. That all equates to, if you can get to those levels, then it's much easier then to hit your 225 max. And again, like I said, this is protection, but this is also throwing speed. So these whole factors that I talked about in number 2 up into here, these also have an effect on your max percentage there. So now if we look down here, your 250 max, like I said, these ranges are very high. This can wear on the shoulder. And in order for you to get to this point, you're going to have to do a lot of sets to 80 to 90% for 2 to 5, where here you just do 3 times 8 to 10 and you're good to go. And look down here at the rotator cuff here. You got 8 pounds, lat pull 120, and triceps 35 in order to hit this max here. So once I get a pitcher or a throwing athlete up to this point here, rather than focusing on trying to get them to higher levels here, what I do is is I focus just on this. I just try to get them to this level here. And then what we do is we tie these three in with more of this right here. Rather than focus on barbell bench, we focus on the dumbbell, cable, unilateral work, and speed bench, okay? And we're gonna go into that now into program design so you can really have an understanding. Real quick here for females, okay? My initial goal is to get them to 115, and you can do that with 65 to 75%, 3 sets of 8 to 10, okay? But the most important thing right here is trying to reach these numbers initially with the females. And then to get to a 125 or 135, which isn't really necessary, I'm not really concerned about that, but what I try to do here is I try to get the rotator cuff and lat pull and tricep up to these levels here. Okay, this is the general kind of concepts or programs that we use for someone who either is working towards a 225 max or they have an established 225 max, okay? So in red here is basically the difference here of just the minor change that we make if they already have an established 225 max, okay? So the main thing I want you to understand here is you can look through all these different exercises. This is day 1 and this is day 2. 1A and 1B just means that these are supersetted together, and then we have a certain rest that they take between each one of these. But what I want you to really notice here is basically the chest exercise, okay? So here they're gonna do, they're benching here 65 to 75%, 3 sets of 8 to 10, and then they go over and they superset the rows, and then they take a rest break in between. But the only difference is if they're working if they have an established 225 max, we just basically would eliminate this, and now they just do flat bench alternating hands, one going from one hand to the other, and they just do 3 sets of 8 to 10. And down here then the dumbbell incline bench remains the same, 3 sets of 8 to 10. So in this we're working more strength here, and on day 2, if you notice, the reps are a little bit higher. We're working more endurance. But here's the other change here. If we look down at day 2, we do dumbbell bench here alternating if someone's working towards a 225 max. If not, we eliminate this out, and then they're doing their speed bench 50 to 60%, 5 times 4. You can do 8 sets of 3, 8 times 3. There's a variety of different ways that you can do speed bench, okay? So those are the major, this is just conceptual, but this is how we kind of go about working towards strengthening them before season and increasing their throwing power. If you want to learn more about the exact program design that we do, check out our 6 levels of sports training. The link is in the details of the video. And also we have a cheaper alternative where you can learn the foundations of our sports training called Corexcell 12.